Hello and welcome to Surveyor Says, the podcast from the National Society of Professional Surveyors. Each week, we bring you fascinating guests that are involved in the profession of surveying. We cover a lot of ground, including Table Lay Talk with Gary Kent, Point of Order with the NSPS Joint Government Affairs Team, Future Focus, highlighting current and future leaders of the profession, and everything survey-related in between. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Surveyor Says. Hello and welcome to another episode of Surveyor Says. My name is Tim Birch. I'm president-elect of NSPS. And today we're going to go a little bit different route. We've had some fun talking to candidates for NSPS and for the young surveyors. Now we're going to jump right back into industry and talk about some things that that really are very important and I think are becoming more and more important every day. We're talking to our good friends of DGT out of Boston. I think that's where you two gentlemen are at. It matters not. Which Mike wants to go first?
Let me kick off. All right, I'm the one with the big ego, I guess. Mike, I'll be Mike 1. So I'm Mike Clifford. If you need an introduction, I'm a licensed land surveyor in Massachusetts, also in Rhode Island. My office is right in Boston in the Seaport District. One of the founders and currently president of DGT. Which is a firm with 4 offices, 3 in Mass, eastern to west central Massachusetts, and 1 in southeast Connecticut, and about 48 people, I think, the last time I counted. We're looking at the Christmas bonuses, so I better get the totals right. And that's it. I'm a practicing licensed land surveyor, degree in civil engineering. Don't hold that against me. But I'm right out in college, had a couple of survey classes at Northeastern University in Boston, and went right into survey, co-op jobs in survey, and went right into that as a career in the, I'll say the mid 80s, maybe the early 1980s started out.
Nice. All right, Mike number 2.
Yes, we actually try to make it easy for people, so when they ask for a mic, there's one of us is going to definitely chime in. But my name is Mike Twohig. I'm the director for the Subsurface Utility Mapping at DGT. Actually, I'm a 38-year rookie of the industry. I've been involved with locating and mapping underground infrastructure my entire life. So I've had the pleasure of working on 4 continents, cut the grass on 3. So I'm feeling pretty good that it's been a good career choice to be involved with locating and mapping underground utilities. And these days, Mike Clifford and myself have been collaborating on underground utility mapping, and it's a large part of our work. And it's an industry that's growing and growing. So we're a part of champion surveyors to be involved more with underground utility locating. And I think a lot of the problems with infrastructure, we have solutions that can apply to every surveyor in the country. So we look forward to this opportunity to discuss it today.
Sure. Well, and this falls right in line. We recently started a What is Surveying series, talking about GIS, talking about geospatial, talking about a few other things, because obviously the 3 of us go far enough back that we remember it. I'm actually a second-generation surveyor, and I always kid around that today's surveying is not my father's surveying tasks, and there's so much more technology and so much more opportunity that now we're getting into the subsurface underground stuff, and this is really surveying. It's not just some off-brand niche of things. This is really surveying, and so I guess this is really I'm glad that we've hooked up and to talk about this, because would really like to know more, and I think we're going to need to know more as this market sector grows. So I guess the first question I asked for both of you is, why are surveyors the best professionals to really oversee and manage SUE types of work? Mike 2, you want to go for that one?
Yeah, I think one of the big cases for surveyors being involved with underground is the spatial accuracy that we can bring to the table. I think if you look at a lot of what we write and talk about over the past few decades, surveyors have played a lesser role or not enough of participation in locating and mapping the underground. And what we saw was a transition from very highly reliable maps from the late 1800s, early 1900s. And as the years have progressed, there's been less surveyors at utility asset owners' offices. And what we've seen is a degradation in the quality of the information. And it's not that GIS databases don't always have the right information. It's not always in the correct geospatial position. So in recent years, we've seen the turning of the tide where more surveyors, more utility surveyors have been involved with mapping the underground and bringing back the spatial awareness for where things are really buried. And that becomes very important, not from an asset owner's operation and maintenance, but it also has a huge impact in underground damage prevention for asset owners, that you see all of these catastrophic incidents around the country. And we really feel that sometimes it's a spatial awareness. The common thread is that people said, I didn't realize I was digging on a gas line. I didn't realize the utility was here, or they mismarked the location. So Mike and I study this phenomenon pretty seriously and on a regular basis, and the common thread always comes up that it was just not accurate, it wasn't right. And we believe that if more surveyors participate in our industry, if they get involved and they're aware of the dangers and what the risks are associated, they would approach it differently and be more involved, because it is a growing industry and you can manage the risk very well as a surveyor. We're well acute to risk, so I think there's a big role for us here.
Well, Mr. Clifford, I think he's pretty much covered a lot of it. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, always. Most surveyors know SUE. They know the term, and many surveyors have worked in that industry, subsurface utility engineering. We use the terms SUM, M for mapping, subsurface utility mapping. In some cases, I for information, as subsurface utility information, as we talk more towards how the data is not collected and mapped, but how it's handled and put into intelligent systems for legacy use and broad use, much more than the specific project at hand. So if you get a bunch of surveyors in a room and you start talking about surveying, you're gonna hear some heavy sighing, right? Oh man, I hate plot utilities. I hate connecting the dot. The old thing used to be, I'm kind of from the hand drawing days, we got the colored pencils out and the tracing paper, and you trace out the utilities. I'm talking level C for those in the know with ASC 3802. We didn't call it level C back then in the day, but that's what it was, connecting the dots, in other words. So you connect the dots, then you give it to the fellow at the desk next to you and to check it, and they come up with something different for the map. And so surveyors have the deep history in plot and mapping utilities, just as the discipline of surveying is mapping things correctly and get it into a CAD format for designers to work from, or GIS. So we recognize that SUE is an industry. It's an association now. It's what the term that ASCE 38 ASCE uses, and no knock on it. Subsurface utility engineering is a very important discipline. It has to do with managing utilities from planning through to commissioning. The role of a surveyor in it, of course, is mapping. DGT, we have engineers in the company, but they're not involved with this directly. We're not giving engineering advice. We're not designing utilities. We're not, writing, manuals on maintenance of utilities. We're basically finding where they are, which involves geotech as well as surveying and traditional survey techniques, but significantly mapping and getting these into what looks like a survey, state plane coordinates or a project control system in a plan, a CAD file that a design engineer can use. So I'm certain, Mike and I think we don't call ourselves apostles on this. I'm not going to get all grandiose, but we talk it up. We've been to MALSE, the Mass Surveyors, and we've spoken at New Hampshire to the Rhode Island surveyors about this topic. And, we always try to emphasize that, look, guys, ladies, this is surveying. We used to complain about the GIS got away from us. Well, you still hear that. Oh, the GIS, that should have been surveying. Well, this is something that is not getting away from us. It's everybody recognizes in a project framework that the surveyor is the one who provides the property line, the grades, topography. Well, what's underground? That's part of the mix.
Exactly. Well, and I guess something I wanted to touch on with you guys that, especially in this era now, even beyond the pandemic and such. I mean, we're the surveying community, the surveying profession is I won't say it's necessarily a renaissance, but if you're not a surveyor right now and you're busy, you're doing something wrong. So everybody's busy. There's so much stuff going on, and I'm similar to you. I'm based out of a major metropolitan area here in Chicago. Lots of stuff going on. A lot of people spending money doing all this stuff. Are you finding less resistance to wanting to do this underground locating, a lot of this stuff? Because we're seeing it that we're recommending to a lot of our developer clients that they're now, I mean, we're getting into some more brownfield areas and things to where these are spots that weren't previously looked at because of cost constraints and whatever. They're now spending that extra money to do a lot more investigating into some of these spots. Are you seeing that as a trend, that people are actually spending the money and then going, wow, I wish I'd had this information before? Either one, Mr. Clifford.
Let me throw out that yes, to an extent. Client demand for subsurface utility mapping to level B and A standards has not exploded, but it is definitely increasing. The awareness is increasing. We always say that, well, once we do that for a client, do the level B mapping, for instance, then the next time, we've had this with institution, I'm thinking of one university, a campus situation, where the next time they say, oh, can you also give me a quote for that kind of utility mapping you did, meaning level B. Utility companies, we work for major utility companies, and they certainly know what it is. And they're up in the technology. They're not buying it, right? That's not their expertise, but they understand radar tomography, and they're talking to us about it. Vacuum excavation in the utility world is very well known, has been for a long time. I am definitely seeing an uptick in, I say, over the past 5 to 8 years, maybe 10 years in client awareness. It doesn't hurt that DGT, when we write a proposal for topography for a site that involves utilities, as inevitably they do, quite often we put in a breakout and add alternate proposal for level B surveying and send them the ASCE standards at 3802 so they know what it is, D through A. So I think that's a bit of education we're doing through our proposals that is getting traction.
Good. Mike, you got anything to add to that?
Yes, I think one of the. Sorry about my little guy barking here in the background. I work from home in Florida these days, so it's been very, very nice.
Good.
But one of the things that we have seen in the past couple of years is we still fight the awareness of the service that subsurface mapping or utility surveyors provide. So, traditionally, if you look at what any of the websites for the definition of a surveyor in most respective states, it says it's defined as a professional surveyor that maps the above ground, but it also has a reference to the underground workings. But for many years, I think, surveyors have been just preoccupied with the surface of the world up and forsaking some of the efforts that we could do for mapping the underground. And for us, despite the ASCE 3802 has been in place for 20 years now, we still find customers and clients that were not aware of the standard. They didn't realize we have a standard of care. And all of our industry is designed about communicating the reliability of subsurface information on a drawing. So if you look at a traditional topographic or an ALTA survey, a lot of the lines, the line types doesn't really tell you how reliable the information is. It hearsay? Did it come from a one-call paint on the ground? Right. And so what we try to do is turn back the clock and said, okay, the ASE was designed with the 3802 was designed to communicate reliable information. So what Mike is referring to as level B is some sort of a remote sensing technology. And it can be anything from $1,000 pipe locator up to our $500,000 radar tomography unit, where we investigate the underground, and we can actually trace and detect an underground facility, survey that up, and put it onto a drawing and have a high reliability that it's accurate and it's in the right place, and we know approximate location by definition. On the contrary, if it carries an annotation, the low level, which is level D, it's basically hearsay. It could be a trench cut. It could be remembering a line. It could be documents from old records or legacy data that has never been verified. But the intent is for design, construction, civil designers, contractors to be able to understand what the source of the document, how reliable it is, so they can make informed decisions to keep themselves and everybody downstream from us on the project safe. And so that's really where our focus is. And what Mike refers to is we've added this into our proposals for clients for many years, because if they're not aware of it, that if we're doing an ALTA survey, we're not doing any investigation with remote sensing technology. On the other hand, if you're going into final design of a major building or a utility, you probably do want to investigate the underground to mitigate the risks, but also to make sure that you do a very good design. So we do a lot of work. In terms of the uptick in work, I think it's not really about anything to do with the pandemic. It's getting more awareness out there, whether it's in social media or in the publications and the public speaking we do. But just try to get the word out there that more and more surveyors are getting involved with this. The technology is getting better, and it's very attractive to bring young surveyors into our industry because there's a great career to be had here.
Well, exactly, and that's one reason we're trying to do, especially at the national level with NSPS and through our state affiliates, trying to figure out more and more ways to really broadcast the message of all of the opportunities that are within surveying because of all the geospatial opportunities, just so many, and this obviously is being one. And like I said, that's what we're seeing in the Chicago area, at least, is that out of necessity, the underground exploration needs to be done and mapping needs to be done, because some of these sites that we're going back 100, 150 years, who knows what was there, and all of a sudden they now want to put another Amazon warehouse there, and the clients are wanting to pull the trigger on this technology that much easier. At least that's what we're seeing here. So I'm glad that you're including that almost by default within your proposals, just like you said, just to make the clients aware of all of these things. As far as licensed land surveyors, putting all of this together with a specialist that's doing that knows the technology, that knows the ins and outs of what they're seeing through your location devices. I mean, how much does the surveyor actually play a role in that actual detection or oversight of the data? I mean, how does that work with a licensed land surveyor?
Well, yeah, I'd like to answer that. Well, first of all, we have in-house people who know how to use GPR and line trace in the electronics. So that's key. It's not necessary. A surveyor quite often teams with those people. But I'll put it this way. We get calls quite often from people who go on the internet. They have to find some underground lines. Sometimes they're digging a hole tomorrow. The pile drivers are coming. I tell them, well, okay, you don't want us, okay? Give us some time to send out the letters and wait a few weeks to get the plans back from utilities, and then we'll do our professional job. But I say that more politely than that. But when people call like that, and it's a real project, they're doing some expansion, that they really need true mapping. I've learned to ask them, well, who else are you getting pricing from? Who else are you calling? And invariably, quite often at least, they've called firms that do components of underground location. Firms that specialize in GPR readings are, geotechnical people, geophysical people, line tracers, people who are very good at what they do. But what they're not getting is somebody who's going to give them a plan, a CAD file, right, that goes right to the civil engineer for design work. So that becomes a matter of, now the survey comes in and locates the paint marks. right, and puts that on the plan. So I explained to people that, well, with the surveyor running the project, we start from the get-go with the geospatial aspect that you need to develop a set of design construction plans. So that is where the surveyor comes in. We've had cases, Mike and I will recall being at a DOT meeting where we're talking about this with DOT engineers, and they came in. One of the fellows left the room, and he came back with a report from an underground mapper, underground specialist, and it was a GBC bound thick volume with a lot of information in there, images from the GPR readout, explanations, tolerances, and so forth. And he slammed it down on the table, a little bit of a dunk on that old drafting room table, and he said, "There's no CAD file. How am I going to design my highway exit?" So that's what we promote as professional mappers, is that we're not dendrologists, but we can get a tree on there, right? We can tell you a coniferous from a deciduous, and we can even go further, find the Latin name of the Vulgate name for the tree, if you want us to, the drip edge. So we're not architectural historians, but we can describe that building well enough. So if you see what I'm getting at, is that there's nothing wrong with surveyors, professional land surveyors, harnessing the disciplines necessary to give the client what they want and what they need.
Oh, good. Mr. Twohig, you have anything to throw into that?
Yes, from my perspective, we get quite a lot of questions about, the teams that are involved with preparing subsurface utility maps. And we describe it, it's no different from doing any major building project. There's a lot of professional trades involved that have to work in unison to complete a project, whether it's steel workers, electricians, carpenters. So there's a lot of professionals involved, and our service is not much different. So we still believe that it should be under the supervision of a licensed professional surveyor to oversee the works, to make sure that it conforms to state standards, rules, and regulations that apply to the work. Which is where some of the surveyors that are in utilities run amok, because they're actually doing it and probably breaking state and federal laws depending on where you work. For us, there's a clear and concise overview by a licensed site professional. So in many of my projects, it's either Mike or one of our other principals. But then we also have a lot of professionals that are very good at line tracing. There's the people that are using pipe locators. We've got a PhD on staff that does the geophysics work that I review and look at, but it's a very tough thing to learn this thing quickly. But we also have traditional surveyors that are locating not only the results from our investigation inside chambers, LIDAR work that we do above and below ground, but also doing the pit diagram similar to what asset owners did in the past. So we have a lot of people working together, and we do find there's a difference of opinion with some people in our industry, but we believe we're right. By reading definition of professional land surveyors, we believe this is the domain of a surveyor, and we have a lot to bring to the table. But it doesn't mean that Mike has to be a professional geophysicist to be able to run some of the equipment, but we know how the workflows go, and the work we do is very similar to traditional surveying. In fact, one of the biggest impacts what we have on our industry is that for many surveyors to minimize the risk associated with the traditional work they're doing today, and it's amazing to us that we still find people that are not aware of this, is that even if a surveyor just took every drawing they prepared with utility information and said all the utility line information depicted on these drawings conforms to ASCE quality level D information. And in addition to the one call, so we often see the one calls, but we definitely think that surveyors in general should be adding that note that all information should be considered quality level D information by the 3802 standard. And that helps with risk and management of the risk associated with underground construction.
Very good. I will admit, I just made a note of that. I like that tip. So definitely we'll consider that for going forward. No, I guess as far as the technology itself goes, obviously it's a big it's been a big investment over the years, and really trying to delve into this stuff. How much training, how much knowledge do you what does one have to be able to go out and use this technology with a high confidence level? I mean, how much do they really need to know about the workings of the equipment itself?
30 years, Mike? 35 years?
Well,
yeah.
I'll let you give the serious answer.
Yeah, no, I'm a 38-year rookie. I learn something every day about utilities, and the bigger your geographic area, the more you have to learn. There's different things in different places. But I think if you start at the fundamentals, the very first thing is locating all the surface structures to get to level C and D. I think every surveyor in the country is quite capable of pulling that together and putting a drawing that meets the first two standards. So, like Mike had said earlier, that level C information is surveying up utility structures, connecting the dots without remote sensing technologies and adding the attributes, whether it's a CAD or a GIS document, to, carry that reliability information over to other users. But the remote sensing technologies get a little bit tougher, especially with the GPR system. So a pipe locator is a very simple tool, and there's some great places like Staking University in Illinois is one of the great places that you can send them. We still send, even though all the years of using them, we still send locators to be trained at Staking University in Illinois, because it's a great fundamental training of how to get familiar with the systems, what they do, how to work them, and how to connect up to live systems safely. Ground penetrating radar is a little bit more difficult. It's very easy to push a GPR system around, whether it's a push cart system, which is the single and double channel units. But our $500,000 investment recently is to radar tomography, which is a big wide array, 7 feet wide, that we tow behind the vehicle. And getting positioning on a moving system like that it's a little bit tougher. Obviously, we've got to do not only GPS, there's HDMI, there are cables for wheel encoders. Now we're looking at SLAM solutions recently. So the sophistication grows immensely, and post-processing that data becomes very tough. It's not as easy as some of the LiDAR data has been. Very mature softwares, a lot more people that can train and bring you up to speed, and we find a lot less people in our industry. So we do a lot of mentoring and training in-house, but there is some outside vendor help as well.
Sure. Well, and the reason I bring that up is that, that's one thing that I think we're going to continue to fight within the surveying profession, is this influx of, the photogrammetrists, now lower cost LiDAR, of the UAVs, and the ease of software, and people coming in not licensed, not even got the remote pilot's license, and they're offering these services, obviously. So I'm glad to hear that it takes a pretty high level person to be able to afford to be able to buy into the technology that you're talking about, and be able to actually really provide a competent use for it. Go ahead. You got something, Mike?
Mike one here. There's a lot of talk going around now about using all these new technologies and sort of a black box approach, what Mike likes to call the Star Trek approach to surveying, meaning, well, it's not really there, but the idea that you can use LiDAR, drones, to map out underground utilities is, I'll say it's nuts. The stuff is underground, folks. It's got dirt around it. So the physical aspect to this, and these conversations always end up like, we can't hire enough people. Where's the young people? This stuff is so exciting. Well, the first thing we say to those young people, okay, you want to be an underground mapper? Great opportunity. It's really not enough people doing it. It's the perfect storm of goodness, which is a great, tremendous built-up demand to find what's under there, combined with the very poor mapping that's been done since the plane table went away. I'm not being a curmudgeon talking about that. Utility companies had fleets of surveyors. Maybe they got $1 a day, but they produce some wonderful, accurate, thorough maps based on real surveys. That's gone away in recent decades and has to be restored. So it's combined all that with the fact that there's not enough people doing it. In surveying in general, we can't hire enough. So we would play up with this, talking to young people. We have recruited people, young college graduates, engineering graduates particularly, and the technology is a turn on. But we say to them, okay, you're going to get on the middle of Main Street open that manhole, stick a rod down, and scrape it around to get that invert. Right? I haven't seen a drone yet that can do that, and I haven't seen a artificial intelligence that can do that. So that's not going away. And it's also the other big aspect of this, where 30 years doesn't hurt, is knowing what underground utilities look like and how they're built. That is, having worked in construction and site work, you know what a gas chamber looks like. You know what a steam system looks like. And it's regional to some extent. The Northeast, we've got brick line chambers, we've got Western Union tubes, we've got wooden water pipes. California, the West, they've got the huge drainage underground conduits. So there's a bit of local knowledge there, but it really does take somebody who understands, who can. Well, I tell Mike he's got X-ray vision, right? He can look at a street and tell you what's underneath there. There's a bit of that involved with knowing really how these things are built.
Well, and even on top, even on top of that knowledge base, it's also just dealing with the amount of data that you're collecting through all of this. I got to imagine we're talking terabytes of data through a lot of these processes, a lot of these tasks. And
I've got
being
3
able
words
to,
for you.
What?
GIS.
Well, exactly, and that's one
Sorry
reason that no, you're right on. It's so much data, and I don't think people truly, especially some engineers, truly appreciate how much data we're talking about, and being, having a competent manager of all of that data that the surveying profession does provide, to put it in a geospatial reference. So, no, I truly I'm impressed with how you guys go about doing your work, because we get a lot of the Chicago Office of Underground. We get some of these, and I kid around about these things being cartoons, but they really are, from these historical maps, and that's why it's so important to have this type of technology and this type of data going forward. I guess kind of for my final question is, where do we go from here? Where's the technology is going, and where's the everyday use, and is this going to become, in your opinion, a more commonplace task that's going to be asked for? Just like computers and everything else becoming lower in cost and easier to use and more commonplace, do you see that within this realm as well, Mr. Twohig?
Well, I think from where we're going from here is that I think more and more surveyors won't have the option to look away from ASE 3802 and the quality level standards if you want to address the risk associated with utilities. Even if you don't work in the utility mapping domain, you still have this in ALTA surveys. You still have this in topographic and existing site condition surveys. So I think more surveyors are going to be involved with this work, whether you like it or not. I think more people, because of social media, it's easier to hear about it. So many years ago, I always had people said they were not aware of it, or they've never heard of it. Well, maybe they had an excuse, maybe they had no internet, but I think the internet's been around and most people have connectivity. So if you've got a smartphone, you've got access to knowing how to do due diligence when it comes to depicting underground utilities and how you manage the risk. For us, we know exactly where our industry is going, in that the subsurface mapping is going to be a major part of our business in the future, and not only supporting our own engineering internal client, but also for how we map the underground, especially with a new federal bill coming into place for infrastructure. And how do you map this so quickly? If we don't have enough of staff already, how do you change workflows and how we collect data? And just for an example, we had a project exactly this time last year. They needed 18 miles of subsurface mapping done quickly. And by using one of our big wide array antennas, we actually were able to map an entire 18 miles in 3 days before a snowstorm. So capturing that first baseline survey is going to be done with mobile mapping systems. We don't always believe that that's going to be with a drone, because, the big push, in our opinion, is going to be in the urban areas, in the urban canyons, the highly densely populated area. And so we don't always see a drone as taking over our task of doing that. So we believe that it's going to be done on a mobile platform, combining thermal imaging, LiDAR systems, underground GPR, all of those sensors working in unison to capture baseline data so that teams can move quickly and get that data exported to our team to be able to deliver on a much faster time frame than traditionally we've done in the past. And so we believe that's also the way we can move forward by attracting the talent we need to grow, and our competitors are the same way. We believe once you show the young talent, we can attract more people into the survey discipline and show that it is evolving and there is something that is a global career, but it's also succession planning from data collection in the field to being management and whatever role you want to play in the geospatial industry. So we're convinced, if you look at our website at dgtassociates.com in Boston, we put an awful lot of this information out there to share with other people how to manage the risk and where we go from here. So I think there's a lot of roads and avenues out there for us. It's pretty exciting.
Oh, exactly. And I, and that's one thing that, I've had people ask, we want to be on the podcast and we want to pitch this. That's what I guess what really enthused me about talking to the two of you is that this is where the industry is going. And so the more information we have out there and the more we can share these concepts and these and best practices, the better the whole profession is going to be. So I appreciate you saying all of those things. Mr. Clifford, what do you have to kind of, where are we going with all of this?
Well, I'll just, maybe leave it with something that I say often to the surveyors. Surveyors, we bemoan that, satellites and LiDAR and drones, you can map the surface. It's going to be, we know in our lifetime, it'll be the point where you hit a button, like going on an Uber, a car or a pizza from Uber or whatever, and it's going to map that 2-acre lot field, right? That's inevitable. I think we're seeing that. We're seeing that starting now. But I say to and then also surveys say, I don't want to map utilities. Well, what else are you going to be doing right in the future? But I also say to them, okay, look, go to Apple Maps, look at Google Maps. What's the one thing you don't see? You don't see what's on the ground, right? When's Google going to do something that we can all do? And how often does that happen in life?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I guess I should leave this with one fun question because from you guys basically Mike Twohig, I don't know if you have any alliance, but Mr. Clifford, your Patriots are looking good.
Well, okay, they're coming back a little bit. I'm going to do my best bill here. We're on to where are we on to next? We're on to Indianapolis.
Exactly. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time, and we'll definitely check back in with you soon down the road and see what other things are coming through the pipeline. No pun intended. But no, thank you for your time on this because, like I said, this is a big part of where we're going, and it's just one of those things that, like Mike Twohig said, until we had the internet, there really wasn't that much exposure to this, and so we really need to be able to push this and get those young minds into surveying. So thank you both again, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thank you, Tim, for your time, and thanks for bringing us to your NSPS audience.
You bet.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We enjoyed it today.
You got it.
Have a good night.
You've been listening to the Surveyor Says podcast, brought to you by the National Society of Professional Surveyors. If you have any questions about today's episode or any other topic, please email us at info@nsps.us.com, and we are here to help. Visit our website, nsps.us.com, to learn more about our association, the programs we administer and support, our sustaining members, and information about future episodes of Surveyor Says. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, as well as our podcast host, Podbean. And remember, it's a great day to be a surveyor.